don't get coronavirus in your heart.
Let's do it.
It's the bass.
LOSO__G.
Deacon, the engineer. And we got a special guest here.
Pro Jones 22, aka Tim Prolific Edwajante, aka my students think I have too many names.
How have you been handling all this shit?
I mean, work is work. That's been definitely a large part of my time of what I've been doing. It's been the majority of it, really. But aside from that, man, like I put my energy into like my purpose. So like I redid my website, started re-promoting my book again, just trying to maintain. Try to like find joy every day. And sometimes it's difficult because, you social distancing. For a while, there was concern about whether or not my dad had COVID. So he was like home for 25 days. I couldn't go see him. He couldn't go get tested because he wasn't falling over sick. We lost his great aunt. Rest in peace, Evelyn. And, it's been a heavy time. And only my family is able to like come together physically. And that's not something that was able to take place. But, I feel like in a lot of ways we're blessed because we didn't have as many people within, our immediate relatives passed, but we have people that recovered, and there are a lot of folks that's not their experience. So, like on the one hand, it was heavy for a bit. We're going through it. On the other hand, I'm definitely counting my blessings. A lot of people are in a situation that's a lot worse.
All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, son. The protests, bro. The protests have been wild, son. I didn't even realize this shit was happening. What was that?
You want to take the elephant?
Okay, why not?
I was just talking.
All right, y'all start. I'm gonna join in, but go ahead, man. What was your observation? I'm curious.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not gonna pretend like I know a lot. Like, I knew about the shit that happened, but I didn't realize that so many people were protesting all over the country. And it wasn't like till a few days ago where I started seeing videos pop up of protests in New York and shit like that, and I was just like, "Yo, this shit is for real, son."
Yeah.
Let's do a quick background on what's going on, because technically this is history. So if they find this in the capsule, it'll be another podcast talking about what's going on. So in Minnesota, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Minneapolis.
African American male had a knee placed on his neck for 9 minutes until he died, while he was in handcuffs, and he was saying he couldn't breathe. He was saying, "You're killing me," and it's another unfortunate situation in which a cop exercised his right of power and killed a black man, white cop at that. And
So, what was the reason that they were even going after him to begin with?
they're giving me three different stories.
There are many different stories. I don't necessarily know, but whatever it was, doesn't warrant public execution. He was subdued peacefully. Like there's video footage of him leaving whatever establishment they had arrested him at. His arms behind his back. He was cooperating. They walked him over to the squad car. Next thing you know, he's on the ground. And it turns out it was a 17-year-old black girl who took the video. And she's been highly traumatized by this. And there are a lot of people in the organizing community who have concerns because like her face has been published on social media. And if you know anything about the history of what happened in Ferguson, the majority of the organizers that we saw in some of those iconic photos of throwing Molotov cocktails, that were throwing tear gas.
That man disappeared. They got the dreads and the America shirt.
It's not just him. It's not just him. It's like over somewhere like upwards of 30 people who were like protesters who were filmed in Ferguson, who were part of these organizing bodies, who were doing some of the more radical acts that we really remember of like resisting the police in the face of tanks. They're dead. They were assassinated.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people out there to really try to protect this young sister because she has a lot of fear around that. But this man was killed, and the video went viral. And what made this, I think, what compounded it, is one, we're in the middle of a pandemic where Black and Indigenous people of color are among the highest levels of death rates and contraction rates of COVID. And on top of that, you have these instances of like extrajudicial killings and like enormous instances of police brutality that happen. So like we're more reactive as a result of that. And in a lot of ways, I was talking to Morpheus, And one of the things she was talking about is the ways in which racism is a psychological condition, because it's not based on any level of fact. And when you take people that are mentally ill and you put them inside for this long, or put them under all this social distancing, even when you're looking at members of the police, how they respond to people in public is amplified. It's more aggressive. It's primal. It's all that amygdala. It's all that, like, that animal brain that completely takes over and suspends like any level of rational judgment or compassion in people that didn't really have it for people that look like us to begin with. And and this happened a couple weeks after we heard about Ahmaud Arbery, and we had heard about Breonna Taylor, who was killed before Ahmaud Arbery, and like it took until George Floyd being murdered for like people to go out in the streets for her. And she was shot 8 times in her apartment. You have the Sister Regis, I can't pronounce her last name correctly, who was up in Toronto, who was thrown off the balcony by police. And they said it was suicide.
Yeah, well,
That shit is like top board. Damn.
Like, that was this week. Like, I heard about the day after I heard about George Floyd. So, like, part of it is to realize that this is, as Malcolm X grassroots movement mentioned back in 2012, this happens every 28 hours, at least in the United States, that a Black or Indigenous man, woman, child, or trans person is killed by an agent of the state, whether it's a police officer, a security guard, a vigilante, or some white person who's acting on behalf of what they think America is, takes one of our lives. And this is the everyday reality for us, and we're dealing with that everyday reality while trying to cope with COVID, which is why people really have had enough.
yeah, it's been heavy, and in a weird way, I am fully backing the protest. The radical views that Minnesota has taken as far as rioting.
It's not just Minnesota. Wait, rioting? What's a riot?
That's true. What is a riot? What is that?
Yeah, don't call it riots. And don't call it
Riots are violent outbursts that are like random and not strategic. These are rebellions. Like, these are uprisings. Like, you call it a riot, you got to call the Boston Tea Party a riot, right?
Right.
Like, these are specific rebellions, but there's also some other stuff around that too. I don't want to take up the air yet, but I do have some opinions that are around some of the violence that we're seeing and how it's happening.
I think you should take up the air, though. So.
All right. So one of the things I was researching this morning, and Morpheus and I were back and forth, like between last night and this morning, and I was all over. Like, I'm a Black Twitter OG, so like I was really back on my old school Black Twitter stuff. The segment of Black Twitter that I really chill in is like organizer, Black Twitter and Native American Twitter, and like this. I have some ratchet Twitter too, so I enjoy that.
Yeah.
But the main thing that was coming across from a number of the accounts that I really trust, and from people that I know who are out there who are protesting and marching, I was seeing these videos, and they were talking about people in New York that were assaulting police officers. They were all white. And I remember seeing ACAB spray painted across a police car, ACAB, right? And now I'm used to seeing FTP being here in New York because there's a whole movement, fuck the pigs, fuck the police, free the people, free the people. Like, there's a whole bunch of ways that can be flipped. But it wasn't FTP that was spray painted. It was ACAB. ACAB is all cops are bastards. That's a skinhead tag. That's a white supremacist graffiti tag and tag. And there are reports that came out from Minneapolis, and this has hit the main news. Like, Joyanne Reed on MSNBC has triple confirmed this, that there are reports that there are white supremacist groups and their networks that were under federal surveillance that were stating they were going to go join the protests and start some mayhem. These are the same people that we saw at the CNN Center down in Atlanta, throwing things into the window. They were all white, and we see Black women going on the bullhorns, the same people who were doing the chant saying, please stop, no, this isn't the way. And we see the white people, some of them had police batons and badges on, ran up and hitting the windows and breaking shit. Like, this is what's also been going on. Like, I was looking at some photos from Brooklyn yesterday, and one was like circulating amongst my friends on Twitter, and it's like, let's count all the different ways that this person is an undercover cop. I could see the handcuffs through the dad jeans, and the sneakers that nobody in their right mind would ever wear, with the Yankee cap on backwards.
It's always the backwards hat.
With the earth tone V-neck, and you could see the bulletproof vest under it as well. Like, so a lot of the agitators end up being police informants, federal informants, or undercover officers. Like, I have real questions about who was it that threw the Molotov cocktails at that cop car, because it was 2 white girls from the Catskills. 80% of the arrests in Minneapolis, and this came out from the mayor, not from anybody else, not from an activist organization, not that I wouldn't trust them, but 80% of the arrests made in Minneapolis were made from where people who were arrested for like violent acts that did not reside not only within the city, they were from out of state.
They were from out of the place. That's crazy.
Did y'all see that clip about the news anchor, the news guy, the black guy?
Yeah.
That was literally doing the news. He was there, like they were recording. They were like, "Yo, he's with us."
With the bullet, with the rubber bullet.
No, they just straight
that
up
was another
arrested
one.
him on screen.
Yeah, that was
Literally
in
just arrested him.
I was listening
On
to
camera.
Yeah, that was the Afro Latinx cat, and they released him an hour later, but they arrested him on camera. It was, I think, in Atlanta, where they shot the pepper bullets at the news crew.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I saw that when they were shooting at him with the bullets, with the pepper bullets.
And then in New York yesterday, the police pepper sprayed and they pepper sprayed a few New York State Assembly people that were there peacefully protesting with signs.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
Right. And in addition to the rest of the crowd, ran through with batons. Like, the police were escalating things heavily. And I don't know if it was them or the anarchists or these white supremacists who started first, but the escalation happened quickly. There were the attacks made on the 88th and the 79th precinct. Now, I mean, the 79th is in my neighborhood. I used to know the community relations officer, but I also know the history of the 79th. That's the precinct that shot Timothy Stansberry in 2002 on the back of the rooftop of the building.
Shit, man. Sorry, guys.
And his mother was a crossing guard who worked in that same precinct with the officer that killed her son, had to see him every day because he was never charged or convicted. So, like, when you hear about the history
go
of
ahead, bro.
that were targeted, like, I can understand why people would protest in front of these areas that they feel like there's a military occupation happening from. But part of the issue that people were having and some of the concerns were the folks who are like these agitators. Like, I'm all for it when it's us, when it's Black and Indigenous people of color who are like, you know what, enough is enough, and we decide to take vigorous action. I'm not going to try to police how people protest. I'm not going to try to like do this respectability thing where I'm going to say that it should all be nonviolent, because like actually it's not even violent because people aren't being harmed, as property. And at the end of the day, Target is a multi-billion-dollar multinational company. They'll be fine. You know, so I have concerns about like some of the choices that are being made in terms of like some of these protests going out there with no real plan of like how to be able to be protected, who's in leadership. So I joined a call earlier today just to get more information about what the movement for Black Lives is doing, what some of the actions that are happening that are being planned, what some of the strategy is, and some of the stuff that we heard and some of the stuff we've seen on the news. Like, some of it is us in terms of being out there and mass to give the media attention.
Yeah,
and some of the vigorous action is us. But a lot of it, the stuff that seems to escalate things with the police very quickly, isn't us. Like, it was white people throwing cinder blocks at these cops in front of the 88th precinct yesterday.
Yeah, man, it's interesting when you have, you know, so-called riots, uprisings, et cetera, when you actually
protest.
Protest, whatever you want to call it. It's not. I mean, I wouldn't call it a riot, but I wouldn't call it, riots.
There's a fine line between a riot and a protest.
Here's what I would call a riot, right? The shit that used to happen at Penn State. We won a fucking game, and people would flip over fucking.
That was a riot.
Like, I was literally there when the news van got flipped over because I lived like right off College Avenue. I watched that shit happen. I was like, oh my God, over a fucking football game, bro.
That shit was crazy.
We won, right? That we won.
Yeah.
We won, and then people, everybody started rioting. It's just like, you got this backwards. It's supposed to be usually the other way.
But basically, it's like when these things happen, you have different parties with different motivations try to take advantage. Like, you have agitators, like, for example, skinhead, white supremacist agitators. You'll have, really left-leaning groups, things like Antifa come in. It's like, and, you have all these, I guess agitators. I want to find like a more forceful word because I don't think like, stirring shit up and throwing bricks at people is more than, agitating, you know what I'm saying?
It's violent acts.
Well, yeah, basically, right? And it's crazy because it always hijacks the core, the core movement. Because if you look, the first day it happened, the first day of the Minneapolis protest, there was no violence. There was no violence. It was just protest. That was it. So it's, you do have to question, like, what forces are at play. And it's pretty obvious that people take advantage of any sort of, civil unrest for whatever, and it just complicates things.
Well,
It's like episode of the Boondocks when they threw the chair.
It's the chair.
They start wilding like that. It's like it doesn't hit that level until somebody takes it up to that next notch, and it's usually not somebody that's on the side of the movement.
Yeah, people piggyback and find excuse to do dumb shit, right? When they don't actually care. A lot of people don't care the fact that someone was killed extrajudiciously, like they don't care about that. They just want to do shit, So
Yeah, whatever happened.
I mean,
go ahead, bro.
I mean, for some people, yeah. For some people, that's what it is. And then for others, there's been a history of every major political movement that we've had. Whether we're looking at Malcolm X's speech where he was assassinated,
infiltrated.
His head of security was a police informant, right?
Yep.
The one who was giving him CPR was a police informant. And when he went back to like the people that were paying him to be there as a CI, they were like, "Well, what did you give him CPR for? You should have just let him bleed out."
Yeah.
Like people were present in these movements. There were an unknown number of federal informants that were members of the Nation of Islam. It's an
Absolutely.
unknown number
probably still. Absolutely,
of federal informants and undercovers that were parts of social justice organizations from the 60s till present, and that have been active in destabilizing political movements as a form of counterintelligence. Like it's very, very skillful. It's very clear, and I'm very weary of some of the press that's been happening as well of what the narrative is around the violence that is happening, or really around the destruction of property. Because let's call it for what it is. It's not that people are running up to people's grandmothers in the middle of the street and hitting them over the head saying Black Lives Matter. It is a destruction of very specific types of property. In this case, it is the destruction of state property, of police cars, and vandalizing of police stations. And I mean, you're looking at like the Turner Building down in CNN, or the Target in Minneapolis, which had like a negative relationship. Well, not so much for CNN, but Target had a negative relationship with like the Black people and the residents of Minneapolis. Like it's no wonder why these things are being vandalized. But then you look in contrast to Ferguson, where we all saw on the news that Quick Trip was burned. And the narrative was that these activists there were so fed up with Mike Brown's murder that they ran up and they burned down this gas station, and they're tearing down things in their own community, when it turns out it was undercover police who burned down that Quick Trip.
Yeah.
Like that's where people were going to meet, was at that gas station. And that place was targeted, right? So we also have to be really mindful of like the news that we consume and what narrative we have. There's some really great sources. The Movement for Black Lives has a lot of really great information, especially for folks who are like, they want to figure out how to get involved. I had friends on Facebook this morning asking for like, well, where can I find a bail fund for people in my city? I keep seeing the bail fund for people in Minneapolis, but I want to make sure that people who are protesting here in Houston get bailed out. And the like local chapters of Malcolm X grassroots movement or Cop Watch, but definitely the Movement for Black Lives have information and databases where they're setting up that information. There are a whole bunch of attorneys showing up on social media talking about how they're offering their services pro bono for people who were arrested within their city.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's considering going out and protesting, it's like you need to take down some of these pro bono lawyers, or NAACP Legal Defense Fund, organizations that are willing to defend you or to bail you out if you are incarcerated for protesting. You need to write those names on your arms in Sharpie. Make sure your phones are fully charged and that have security codes on it, or you may bring a burner phone with you in case the phone gets destroyed. If you take video, make sure it's uploading directly to the cloud. Don't go alone.
Yep.
Have an expert. Like all the things they teach you before you go to like a major protest. And a lot of that information isn't happening because people are like fed up and want to get out there, and they don't know where to go to turn to for information. Anyone who's listening, who's watching, who isn't sure, you can tweet me, at me, DM me, whatever, ProJones22, and I'll share what I know with you. You may not see me outside because I might be writing, I might be doing some healing work, but it doesn't mean I don't know what to do, because the first major protest I was a part of, I helped organize. So that's what it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, there's a lot of resources. Also, the ACLU, hopefully, I think they're probably already on it. Um, I think
They are, but it's
um,
tricky because they're a free speech organization. So
yeah, they could be on either side. It
also
depends.
represents white supremacists. Like it's just about the freedom of speech, like
Yeah,
impartially. But they do have
yeah,
resources too.
yeah. It's very interesting what you mentioned about like destruction of property because you know what I view is sort of the um I don't want to call it like American ethos or whatever, but something that seems sacred in capitalist societies is property. So part of the I guess the outrage, like whenever you go on the internet, things of that nature, you read comments, you read threads, and then you see obvious support for the protests, but on the flip side, you see people, how can these people do this? They're destroying property, they're criminals, X, Y, and Z. It's just very interesting how I think any person who's just looking at it from purely a human perspective, be like, okay, they're just destroying property, is not a big deal, but property is property has a certain sanctity in the American context, which is why there's so much um I guess fury directed towards the protesters. I just think is very interesting. It's like the context that we exist in affects how we view things and how the media reports things and things of that nature.
I'm just curious about where is that sanctity of property when Stanley Cup happens and a hockey team wins and they tear a whole bunch of shit up and break car windows and whatever else. Like, where's the oh my
Oh, it's
god?
not consistent. The anger isn't consistent. I mean, you'll have a few people be like, yeah, it's fucked up, but it's like it's not really consistent. I feel when things are as big as they are, like when you have a story that's huge in the news cycle and makes waves, I feel like everyone has to make their opinion heard, and particularly when it involves a death of a black man, everyone wants to chime in. You know what I mean? And there's always this. I'm not racist, but this sort of thing. It's interesting.
If you gotta say but,
Yeah, it's all. I'm not racist, but
I'm but.
but he was a felon. He did go to prison.
There's
What was he doing? Like,
they always create a backstory and they show like a worse image of the person. Like, oh, look at this guy. He's such and such. They try to use the fact that he had a white wife to kind of like sway his
Oh, he did?
supporters. Yeah, he had a white. Yeah, his wife was white, and apparently, backstory wise, the person that actually killed him, they were what did Damien say? They were bodyguards, not bodyguards, bouncers.
They were employed by the same security agency as bouncers.
Oh, yeah, they were bouncers together. So he either knew of him or passed by him, whatever.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I usually have a plan, not for something like this, but just a plan in life in general. And when it comes to situations like these, I just really don't know what to do. Very weird for me.
I mean, I think for us also as educators, the question ends up being, what is it that we want to do with our positionality? What are the ways in which we choose to be involved within the community? And I think part of it is, like for me, I've circulated some positions. I'm circulating some basic information, like amongst my students, amongst my friends, amongst my family. I'm trying to be equitable in terms of like the way I talk about it. Like even the narrative, like when we had a staff email that went out talking about like, Black men, I love you. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I've heard about just as many Black women, as many Black trans folk and gender nonconforming folk who've been like killed by the police in the past couple of months. And it's not like it's just Black men this is happening to. So how are we like shifting how we even talk about it to really be about this work? Like a Black trans man was just killed in Miami by police.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago. Tony McDade. And like a lot of the Black trans folks, I think Nikki, I can't remember her last name right now, out in St. Louis was also like stabbed to death in the middle of the night, possibly by a police officer.
Yeah.
Or if not by some white guy. Like there are these Black trans deaths that happen as well, and they become invisibilized. Native Americans are disproportionately shot and killed and incarcerated by police at a higher percentage than anyone else in the country, because like it's a smaller population and it happens so frequently that it's actually like it's at twice the rate of what happens for Black and brown folk otherwise. But like those stories are completely erased, right? In terms of like what the Navajo Nation is dealing with in terms of COVID, their transmission rate is higher, and like the health services are being denied to them on a federal level in terms of testing. So there's a massive like detrimental effect that is happening. I think there are a lot of ways, and when we're seeking like justice and equity, it's got to start with how we shift our narratives. I've been thinking a lot about this poem by Gil Scott Heron called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." And when he said that, he said like I was listening to the live version of it, because the live version is one of my favorite ones. Like it's a talk he does. Like the beginning, he does this poem about Black history, which is really ironic, and he has like a little 5 or 10 minute stand up set, which is actually really funny. Loshi would like this, where he's talking about like when Jaws came out, like a lot of Black people were on the side of the shark.
I gotta see.
You see, like, because you as the white people were invading that shark's neighborhood, you going to the beach, he was going to the supermarket.
Oh, I saw this.
Yeah. So like, but he goes from that to start to introduce the revolution will not be televised. And when he talks about it, it's like, well, people are like, well, look on TV, see the revolution is being televised. You see the uprisings that are happening in Watson, wherever else. And he's like, no, you see the effects of the revolution. You see the impact of the revolution. You see the aftermath. Mm-hmm. But the revolution that happens is in the mind when you are awakened to decide that, okay, I want to move into some type of action, or I don't know what to do, but I want to do something. When you change your way of thinking, that is a revolution, and that cannot be televised or tweeted or Instagrammed or TikToked or whatever. That the beginning of that is to think about, like, okay, well, what is it that I want to decide to do with my position, with my talents, and with my life's purpose in this particular moment? And it could be that, like, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give some money to this bail fund. I don't know what else to do. It could be that I heard some students I used to mentor in their 20s now, they want to go out and protest. I want to make sure I send them all the information they need to be as safe as they can, or at least to be informed.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I woke up and I wrote on Thursday morning because I went from being numb on Wednesday to rage from most of the day on Thursday. And I had to put it somewhere. And some people put it into Molotov cocktails and threw it at police cars. For me, I put it into something and I published it right to medium.com. I had a couple of friends like look at it, help me resequence parts of it and make sure that it was ready to go. And I was like, if I'm publishing by the end of the day, I'm publishing tomorrow. It's got to go out. And it's got to go out right now. So it doesn't mean that you have to move a rapid response. I know folks were like, all right, I'm gonna wait a while. Or there are a whole bunch of people who are like, I do this activist stuff. I do this organizing work, this community building work 365 days a year. How can I make sure people in my community are getting food who didn't have access to it because of COVID, because they lost their jobs? So we're getting them groceries. We're getting them free, fresh vegetables and making sure that's divided up and tapping into other organizations where that's able to happen. Brooklyn Supported Agriculture has been giving free bags of vegetables to folks in the projects who don't have another way to be able to get the food, right? This is other organization called Best Eye Strong that's been doing something similar and going shopping for people when they don't have access. Because like right now, in addition to like all of this, COVID is still happening. People are still unemployed. People are still trying to figure out if they're getting some type of stimulus.
Yeah.
And we can't take our eyes off of that. The main thing Movement for Black Lives was talking about last week, before all of this, was what can we do to get more visibility for Breonna Taylor, because that what happened is messed up. But what can we do to get the government to release accurate statistics of how Black and brown communities are being affected by COVID? How can we get more people tested? Figuring out what resources do people need? How can we help people? To this type of rapid response around this moment, but those other things can't stop happening.
What's interesting is that you've been a recurring guest on the base since it was the base 40s, from the back in the days, and we had this conversation, the same one we have it now. We had the same one.
Yeah.
I don't remember who passed. God rest whoever it was, but we had the same exact conversation, bro. And we were like, "Yo, would we be in the front lines?" And me and you were like, "Nah, we would be the orchestrators in the back." Making sure that our people have a revolution the right way, And it's crazy because we're right back there having a conversation again,
I mean, I think that like I've been the first real poem I wrote was after I was stopped and frisked when I was 16. And like I edited because Diallo got murdered. He got shot 41 times by police in the South Bronx. And I'm realized like how many times I've written this poem. And it's the reason why like it's really similar to when Sean Bell was killed. That like at first I didn't think I was going to have any words for any of this. So what I wrote on Thursday, and I'll tell the base this is not a widely known. It looks like it's a article or essay on Medium, but the shit's a prose poem, straight up. And what I wrote, like with the free write and what became the piece I published to Medium, really had to do with me trying to navigate this numbness and reconciling for myself a question that we were having with our students is like defining what justice is.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, there's a belief that justice is prosecution within this system and the arrest and incarceration of these officers who do these deeds. But to me, that's not justice. To me, that's accountability. And some people do the same thing, but justice to me would be we had a system where this wouldn't happen, where this is not a recurrent issue, where 20, 30 years from now, we're telling our kids and our grandkids about this stuff. And they're like, what do you mean that used to happen? Like, that would be justice to me.
That was part of my... That's the
yeah. Like, justice is not, for me at least, like I'm a prison abolitionist. I would love to see the police abolished. I believe the police only happen at a point in human society where there's such a division between haves and have-nots that violence is possible because everyone doesn't have enough to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And policing in this country, as we know it, has nothing to do with maintaining safety. It has to do with protecting property, and originally it has to do with like hunting us down, people who look like all four of us. So I've got no love for that particular system. It is rotten at its root. So why not just take it out and plan something better to replace it? That's where I am. So if that's my vision of justice, if I'm clear and committed on that, I'm not going to be like, this officer needs to get life in prison. Life in what? The same thing that I don't want to exist anymore?
Right. It's like...
And I'm not saying that accountability isn't necessary. I do want that accountability, but I want to be very clear that accountability I'm asking for is not justice. It's a consequence. It's a punishment.
And I feel like that's kind of like, in my fault because I just jumped in here in the middle. Like the point is more of like getting arrested or just being in the system is more punishment as opposed to like rehabilitating you, fixing the problem and helping genuinely become like a better citizen. It's just like, you here, you fucked up. Now we're just gonna take advantage of you and shit like that. We're gonna make sure you suffer. And I feel like that's also kind of like the narrative that some people kind of want it to be. Like, you do something wrong, you should suffer. And I think like a lot of other people kind of take advantage of that type of narrative and use it, because you use it for like labor. Because I think that's one, like, jail prisons here are privatized and they're really just kind of like, they're really just a system of cheap labor.
It's business. It's a business. It's like, if I'm running a prison and I'm getting, essentially tax dollars to run the prison, I'm incentivized to get people into prison. It's purely profit driven. And going back to your point and Pro's point, I think it is sort of an American idea that prisons are there to punish rather than to rehabilitate, because and I'm just comparing us to other first world countries. Like, you don't see the type of problems that we have in other countries, right? Like, you don't really see that. And I think it's very indicative of like American culture.
So when I'm trying to think, which is I know it's a white country that I'm thinking of, but do you guys think that the reason they're able to have that type of system is because they have a more homogenous, like,
race?
Set of people, not race, homogenous looking people.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's the way people look. I would just say is that other countries have a greater sense of community, and when it comes through that, there's like a sense of humanity that comes with it. In American system, it's very much competitive, so people are separated into groups, classes, social strata, things like that, and that pretty much informs every part of life. So I do think that is a a huge thing that has to do with it, but I don't necessarily think it has to do with, homogeneity. At least in the sense of, if we had a culture where, we at large just value humanity, as opposed to punishment, pursuit of property, things of that nature, I think it'd be very different. So, I mean, I guess yes and no. I think it's sort of, we're just living in the country that was made for us. America was made through violence, conquering, hyper capitalism, et cetera, and we're just living in we're just living in that system. Just like the protests that are happening now, you could say people are protesting because of, George Floyd, but I would say it's more because of material conditions. People are just pissed off. People have been laid off. People are tired of being discriminated against. People are tired of, living paycheck to paycheck. People are just pissed off generally. So, every so often you're going to get a boil over of, people people being pissed off because of the material conditions they live in,
I was gonna say, like, I think that people also just tired, like Los and I were talking about this cycle of same circumstances that keep repeating. And I do agree that it's those same things. I think it's a combination of those factors. But interesting thing, when you're looking at some of the European countries, and I was really listening to some of your points about like their prison systems functioning differently, their crime rates are also different. Because the taxes are higher and people's like basic needs are also better taken care of. And in Scandinavia, like Angela Davis has this really great book called Our Prisons Obsolete. And one of the things that she investigates in there is the way that incarceration functions in, I believe it's in Scandinavia. It might be in
Norway,
Finland, right?
Oh, sorry.
No, Norway, Finland, Sweden, like all of them have really super progressive responses to like accountability when people commit an infraction or a crime against the community. But like I also think it's ironic. I'm thinking to myself, like, wait a minute, these are the Viking countries.
Yep.
These are the motherfuckers that were some of the most violent people in European history. What happened that they chilled out? And it's like, they were really violent before and nomadic because of scarcity of resources, which is why they were going conquering people, because that's how you got food. That's how you got shit. Is when you have to go take it from somebody else because you can't make it yourself, right? Because you don't have the resources. It's cold. It's depressing there. Well, they created an environmentally sound and forward thinking, like all the stuff we're giving Elon Musk like credit for. They're doing that like 5, 10, 15 years ago. I think it's in Sweden where in one of the cities, they have this plumbing system. It's like you're supposed to go get drunk and go to the pub like all the time and drink mad beer, because when you urinate in the men's room, they've got these siphons that like take heat off the pipes of people's urine, off their piss, and turn the shit into electricity.
That's crazy.
Wow, son.
Go get wasted so we can have more electricity, right? So they come up with all these things that are functional as a part of people's way of life, and they're able to provide like basic human services.
Yeah.
So that people are good enough to be okay. And if they do commit crimes, what their prisons look like holistic retreat centers to us.
Yeah.
So it's about rehabilitation. And it's like, okay, let's sit down. You're going to get some mental health care. You might be doing some group work to figure out what it is that happened with you that led you to this point where you felt like you were going to do something negative towards somewhere else. This is the same place that believed that motherfuckers only went to heaven if they died in battle. They went from that to Prison Country Club with a shrink, which says a lot in terms of like about the possibilities of evolution. Because some people have this idea that we can't reform the prison system or we can't transform it because things have always been this way. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at like some of the, like one of the most historically violent groups of white people and where they are now and what they're doing with their environment and how they are to one another. Doesn't mean they always treat the black and brown people who live there really great. And it does go back to the homogenous society thing too.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
but it's also different in terms of that sense of nationalism. Like America is a settler state. It's really, really similar to Australia in that regards, where people who were sent here, some of them were prisoners, some of them were criminals. T.I. and Killer Mike had some interesting things to say. I don't agree with all of statements, but I understand where they're coming from. Atlanta's a different place. Atlanta's a bubble. It is the closest thing to what kind we have. I understand why they were saying what they were saying. I don't know that I fully disagree with them, but I also don't disagree with the protesters either.
Can you
Who were like,
could
yeah,
you
your
just
response
repeat?
is sufficient.
Could you let us know
Well,
exactly what they said?
T.I. was like,
Summarize.
and the stuff that happens in these other cities doesn't happen to us the same way in Atlanta because this is a black city with a black mayor and mostly black police force, and doesn't mean we don't have our problems here. But let's not destroy Atlanta because we don't want Atlanta to go white again and to become like these other cities. It's like that was the point he was making. T.I. and Killer Mike bought up a whole bunch of like real estate around the West End, and some of their property was getting damaged. So some people are like, well, they're just saying this because they're property owners and they're capitalists. And it's like, yes, and they're also mentioning a valid point of like, go fuck up CNN, don't fuck up these neighborhood mom and pop shops.
Right. Stop hitting the black spots.
But I think that their perception about the property damage that was happening, of it predominantly being us, and I didn't see all the Atlanta footage, so I don't know. Like I've seen a minority of it, but if it's similar to what I saw happening in downtown Atlanta at the CNN building, then I really kind of wish that the celebrities had a bit more caution and pause and had done a little more research before getting in front of the cameras at the behest of the mayor to go and say something to the people, because it ends up coming across as tone deaf. And now there are people we're not going to be really looking at the same way. Like a whole bunch of people like, yo, when did Killer Mike become a sellout? This is the same dude who was out there talking about anyone interrupt freedom, kill him. This is the same dude who was out there like really on some for the people. Yeah. In terms of black and representing Black Lives Matter, like on a celebrity level across the country. Not always saying shit that was aligned, and sometimes saying shit that was strange, but still being viewed as somebody who wasn't so detached. And, you know, for him and T.I. to kind of fall into that vein at this point just tells you how out of touch they were with what was happening on the ground versus like a couple years back, Flandreau Castile and Alton Sterling, T.I. being with his sons marching through Atlanta and being a part of the protests and working with Harry Belafonte. And like there's a disconnect in terms of how fast that response happened in front of those cameras. But I think it's also because of how quickly things have escalated. That I think a lot of people are reacting without thinking because it's harder to think because we've been inside looking at screens for 10 weeks.
Speaking of, and sorry if I brought this up before, that tweet that
Trump said,
Mr. President.
Oh my
Mr. President put out about America. It's these thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty, and we will assume control. But when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you. That shit was fucking wild. And one thing before you go, because like recently, a little while back, Twitter did something that they said that it's part of their policy. If somebody's putting some ridiculous ass tweets out, like misinformation and stuff like that, they're gonna like take it down or like point it out and stuff like that. Which gets into this whole argument about like pretty much companies, social media companies, like really how much should they be stepping in? Donald Trump being this tweet specifically being one of the tweets that would have originally been like flagged and like taken down or some shit like that has been kept up, and it's specifically because of his status and what's going on. But like to me, that's kind of fucking wild, man. Where it's just like, you know, looting, shooting, like that's not the type of shit that anybody in a leadership position should be fucking saying. It like serious, you know, in a serious tone.
Yeah.
Well, that also has a real specific origin too. Like there was a Miami mayor that had said that back in '67, but it was used by white supremacist George Wallace in his campaign, in his run for president. And it was being said about the nonviolent protesters in the South, talking about like Dr. King and everyone else marching down South when the looting starts, the shooting starts. They were saying that in response. So it's a dog whistle for white supremacists. That is a code that is being used to say, I'm with you. Go do the thing that y'all been dreaming and fantasizing about 50, 60 years.
And go get
It's the same dog whistle as Make America Great Again, which Make America Great Again is it's a bite off of Ronald Reagan's 1980 campaign of Let's Make America Great Again. Like none of the shit is original at all.
What were you gonna say, that boy?
You said what? No,
I thought you were gonna say something.
I must have lost my thought.
Yeah, my
But you know what? Some other shit that's happened. So apparently, like, I guess this. I guess the common theme of president being elected, of Trump specifically, is like he's just a distraction to let shit like slide. Like recently, the World Health, he pulled out the World Health Organization, and then he also like blocked a bill that was supposed to provide relief for student loans and shit like that. But just in general, this is kind of like the thing that kind of gets me tight, and I'm guilty of it too, of not like honestly not being like informed enough and not being like involved enough. But it just gets me so frustrated in it, and maybe that's the point, to get me pissed off, so I disengage with like everything around me. But it's just like it's just frustrating, bro, because it's just like so much bad shit happening everywhere and shit like that, and then. Just behind the scenes, you find out that this motherfucker is doing all this shit, and then it just makes me think about how much shit gets passed that we don't fucking even fucking know about. And it's clearly a lot of things, because like I've never gone on my way to figure out what's actually going on politically at any type of level.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a lot to sift through, especially the way we're structured. We have local government, we have state government, we have federal government. Not only that, but it's like, we all have lives, and it's hard for the average person to really stay on the up and up without actually, really going out of their way to focus on what's happening. I mean, I don't know. I would say the best remedy to that is just, do what you can locally, because that's where it starts, And especially nowadays, the Senate is now Republican controlled. So any bill that gets passed by the House isn't, is done in the Senate. They had another $3 trillion bill for coronavirus relief, which would include another stimulus for the average person, passed the House easily, dead on arrival in the Senate. So, it's just one of those things.
That shit is fucking annoying.
It is, but it's what's interesting is that that's also like a very American idea. The fact that we're just sort of on our own. Like, one of the reasons why so many things get shot down by, I would say, more right-leaning people, because a right-leaning person would say that the government just exists to protect property and quote unquote liberty. They're not there to provide you with anything. So anything in the way of stimulus checks, anything in the way of, government aid, food stamps, public education, even public education as an idea. I've spoken to people that don't even believe that should be a thing. It's just crazy that a lot of people in power really, they really believe this. They really believe that as a principle. And it's kind of hard to comprehend when you're coming from the other side of the aisle, but people really believe this. People really believe that, like tax is theft. Like, that's a very common idea, so.
Yo, do y'all watch Patriot Act? The show with Hassan Minaj?
Yeah, nah, Hassan, that's the homie. I enjoy watching. Like, I think that this season's been weird for him because he's a stand-up comic, and I think he's the extrovert, so he gets energy from being in front of people. So I feel like being in front of the screen, so I mean his timing seems different. I think he's still trying to get used to it, but I love that show.
Well, I specifically about it because the last episode was kind of like it spoke more about like the marijuana industry and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And well, just in case y'all wanted to change topic for a bit, but it was just interesting because it's just like, and it's the thing that I guess we all would expect to happen, and unfortunately is happening, is that like pretty much big companies or big, big marijuana, I forgot exactly what they call it, is kind of like taking advantage of all the situations and kind of like scheming on the system and stuff like that, pretty much making it really hard for people to get licenses, letting people get more licenses than they were technically supposed to get and stuff like that. Kind of because I guess the plan originally was to help out the little guy, kind of get like a foothold on the industry and stuff like that, specifically by limiting the number of licenses people can get so in order to grow marijuana. But like in California, for example, I think they lobbied, and it wasn't even that much money. It was like $1 point something million that they lobbied, in order to kind of prevent that. So then like big money companies are just coming in and buying a whole bunch of fucking licenses and stuff like that, and just making it very difficult for people to start up. And then in Florida, it's even worse, man. Florida is such a fucking backwards ass motherfucking state and shit like that. But they specifically refer to marijuana stuff as cartels. And the way they kind of set things up is that you need a ridiculous amount of capital in order to even get started. So like you pretty much, if you want to get started in Florida, you have to have the capital to be integrated entirely vertically through the entire chain. Like you can't just like we can't just go, decide, hey, let's open up a dispensary and stuff like that. That'll be dope. And we just buy our weed. Like, no, you gotta grow the weed, you gotta process the weed, you gotta package the weed, you gotta ship the weed, and then you have to set up the dispensaries in order to sell all of that shit. So the only type of people that are gonna be able to do that is people with man money.
Yeah, people already
and then the other stuff is that it's still federally like not allowed, which makes it even more difficult. There's some other states that like they kind of allowed it to be like, say, sold at like coffee shops. I forgot which state specifically. So the intention was, people are going to grow their own shit and then they're going to go there and smoke. But fucking grow that shit. That shit is hard. So they're pretty much selling that shit. But it's just like the big question is where they're getting this shit from. And it's just like, and then I think out of I think there's only one black owned like marijuana business right now.
Well, not only one. It's only one in the state of Massachusetts.
Yo, what's it called again? I try to see what it's called.
I don't remember what it's called, but that's in Massachusetts. There's only one, and that's because their laws are actually really similar to the ones that are in Florida. There are black-owned ones elsewhere, particularly looking at, I believe, in Colorado and in Washington State, which are like not only is it legalized, it is legal to grow, sell, distribute, whatever. Though. Fully 100% legal. Like you can go smoke a joint on the street, no problem, as long as you're of age. But in one of the concerns is also that a lot of people who were placed in jail and in prison and sentenced because of the war on drugs are not able to actually work in the marijuana industry at all. And like they have a unique set of skills in terms of like they were formerly like growing, formerly selling, like may have had a client base, whatever that is, because they were participants in the underground economy. They're actually prohibited. It's actually the opposite of what happened with like the end of prohibition and starting alcohol companies. Like, okay, if I was bootlegging all that time, I can just transition to a legitimate business now. But that's not the case for people who have been like selling marijuana illegally for this period of time. Their records aren't even being expunged in many of these states. And some they are. So Massachusetts is a state where if you have a record and have marijuana, even if it's just a possession charge, as a misdemeanor, you cannot enter the industry. Like, now we're not even talking about felony charges. We're not talking weapons charges. We're talking just possession charges. And that's another one of the issues. And I think a lot of it's class prohibitive, and it's definitely racially biased. The owner of one of the largest national corporate cannabis companies is former Speaker of the House John Boehner, the crying man. The orange crying man runs a marijuana cartel. And he voted against marijuana being legalized on the federal and state level for like 20 years. And now he's like, well, now I think it's a good time. It's like, yeah, motherfucker, because you run the company.
It's sad. And that's kind of like the thing when I think about like when I cop and shit like that, it's like, and I mean, someone asked me this the other day, like if say if it was legal in New York, like or more legal in New York, and I've been one of the people outside making a line and shit like that. And I'm like, nah, bro. Like I'm so used to just having, my dealers and stuff like that, and I like to give my money to my peoples, not like. But then the other thing is just like they've definitely stepped up their game in New York because like I know that the people I cop from, it's kind of like it's run very, very similar to a business. Like the dealers that deliver to me, they get paid by the hour. They don't get paid like they don't re-up by themselves. They're literally just like workers and shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's organizing my shit anymore, man.
But I mean, even if you look at the way that dealing functioned previously, like people were employees, they may not have like hourly wages and benefits, but if you were a street level dealer, that's like minimum wage. How many hours are you out there working for whatever cut you're getting?
You gotta promote the code.
we just cheap too, man. Like, if you're really gonna be trying to make a money, you gotta sell coke and shit like that. Like we just cheap, bro. Like I don't,
bro.
like,
You gotta sell pills, bro. Come on, Percocet,
You gotta sell the heavy stuff.
Xannies.
You gotta sell that white, man.
To the feds that are listening, none of us are trying to traffic narcotics.
Oh no, of course not.
You need a little boost in your protest? Come to the base.
Oh my god.
see, and then it'd be called the base. It's like they're gonna think that you trying to sell something else, Los.
You don't go to the base for no reason.
Yo, if we get fucking raided, holy shit, that would suck.
Pushing base.
I'm
Nah.
on the 5 o'clock news and shit in handcuffs. Suspected drug trafficking ring, the base. Like what?
The base pod.
But listen, no, we just listen to John Boehner.
Yeah.
Go ahead. On a lighter note, though, yeah, they got the Seinfeld stand up, Insecure.
Insecure, yes. This season.
Bro, you watched the Jordan documentary?
I didn't watch all of it yet. I'm gonna take I want to binge it. I wasn't gonna watch it weekly. I'm gonna binge it. I watched the first one. I'm like, yo, I knew this dude was always a D-bag. I'm a diehard Knicks fan, so I've always known that. It's gonna be real funny to watch. I'm gonna enjoy it.
It's
Take
good.
my time.
Oh,
It's
that's
good. Huh?
You watched it?
I seen 6 out of 10 episodes.
Okay. Now
I mean, here's my opinion, right? Like I think a lot of the fact that people are on it so much is that A, Michael Jordan doesn't talk all that much, and B, there's no sports on. It's a good documentary, not even close to the best documentary that I've seen. Like, in my opinion, there's other 30 for 30 documentaries on their own that are better than what I've seen so far, but it is good. Like, it's entertaining. Like, if you've followed basketball in the 90s, it's like you probably won't find out all that much that you didn't already know, right? It's just that you're hearing it from the people themselves rather than just like, third party ESPN through books or whatever. But I think it's interesting and engaging, but I could already tell, like, by episode 1 or 2, you could already tell, like, they're setting up Jerry Cross to be the bad guy. Like, clearly, like, they always have to have a villain. He was clearly the villain, right? I think it's honest at times, but it's you can tell that they're putting some spin on what happened. It's just hard to tell what the spin is, if that makes sense. But it's entertaining. I'd watch it, but I don't know. I can't watch more than like 1 or 2 episodes at a time because it's not that good. So, like, it's good, but it's not like I watched the whole thing in like a sitting.
Yeah. I would space out too.
Because people are saying, "Oh yeah, it's the greatest thing ever." Oh my god! Like,
it's just
like, bro, like I thought the 30 for 30 Reggie Miller documentary was better than every episode I've seen so far. Like Reggie Miller versus, huh?
I need to watch that Reggie Miller versus the New York Knicks.
Oh my god,
I haven't watched it yet because I lived it. It's going to be triggering for me.
Yeah, honestly, it's not even that bad. Honestly, because I think Wait,
are you a Knicks fan?
I like the Knicks. I wouldn't say I'm a Knicks fan. I'm a Nets fan.
Grow up as a Knicks fan?
No.
See, then it's not going to be like it's triggering for anyone who was a Knicks fan during that period of time.
That's true.
There are just certain people you mention, and like,
oh yeah,
Reggie won't have the same physical response. I'd be like Charles Smith and be like, oh, that motherfucker. Like, yeah. I remember when they were throwing the batteries at John Starks after the game because like Miami and New York had like a blood feud. It was a wild time.
It's funny because it's like it's New York Knicks versus Reggie Miller, but it's kind of like Spike Lee versus Reggie Miller.
Oh,
like it turns into that. It was a really good documentary because it shows that. You said what?
I gotta watch that too, man.
Yeah, it shows the type of person Reggie Miller was and the type of person that Spike Lee was at that time, and I think it's probably the best. Like, it really shows like 90s basketball, like what the energy was, like what was actually happening outside of the Chicago Bulls, and it also touches on Cheryl Miller, how Reggie Miller lived in her shadow his whole career, and he never dropped it. Like that's another thing.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's my favorite 30 for 30.
I heard Mike Tyson. They're trying to get Mike Tyson a bare knuckle box for $20 million.
I mean, he's been training, and like I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to bare knuckle box Mike Tyson. No, thank you.
About bare knuckle boxes.
Well, I mean, he's good for bare knuckle boxing because he does a lot of body shots. The thing about bare knuckle boxing is that, you know, guys break their hands with gloves, right? So when you punch the head, you know, there's that, I forgot what it's called, but there's that bare knuckle boxing league that Paulie Malignaggi was in, and he fought Artem Levin, whatever, and those guys are breaking their hands all the time. So, but I think he would be good, just body shots all day. I think Mike Tyson in a 3-4 round fight where he doesn't have to do, you know, too much cardio, I still think he's a problem, you know.
How old is he now?
He's 53.
Yeah.
53. Yeah. Just give him a 4-round fight, pay him, and, you know, watch the fireworks. I think it'll be entertaining as fuck.
Well, from what he spoke about, he said that when he boxed back, it was a scary time for him. He didn't like it. He said he didn't like that shit. So
well, it's not about him not liking boxing. Well, he also had a trainer that was fucking insane.
His trainer, custom model and brainwash people, but he wasn't the first person he brainwashed. Floyd Patterson, like, you know, he brainwashed the fuck out of everybody, you know.
But but Mike was also on a whole bunch of coke back then too, so it's also very different.
Like, you got the base, that base in the face. Let him know.
When he was on that interview with Joe Rogan, he was talking about like drinking, like smoking weed at a young age. I think the first time he took acid, he was like fucking 11, son.
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck did this? Yo, this man's like
80s.
Yeah, it was the 80s.
It's the 70s and the 80s. It's back when New York was lawless, and he basically raised himself, you know?
Yeah.
He was a knockout artist in the streets before he even like was being trained. Because he grew and developed quickly and was always a strong guy. But like, yeah, I'll be interested. You know, interesting fun fact. I don't know if y'all ever watched the Yip Man series with Donnie Yen.
I seen the first one, and I seen the scenes with Mike Tyson in it.
The first one is amazing. The second one is also really good. The third one is okay, that has Mike Tyson. But during the scenes with Mike Tyson, when they were filming, Donnie Yen broke one of his fingers.
Wait, what?
He broke one.
You're talking about
Yip Man.
Oh yeah.
It's not IP, man.
It's IP, man.
and it's not Ip Man either. It's Yip Man. Yeah. The one of Donnie Yen's blocks was block with the elbow that hit the fist.
Oh yeah.
And on that he broke one. I think he broke his ring finger.
That's not surprising. Yeah. You'll break your hand real easy on elbows or crown of the forehead. Like those are the two places where you'll fuck it up. And I imagine Mike Tyson's probably broke his hand mad times over his career. You know, like boxers break their hands all the time. Yeah. That's crazy. But I mean, it's funny. Like his scenes in it, I'm like, yo, this actually looks really good. Like, yo, he could do more of this. Like he's a good I guess like stunt actor, you know, like he made the movements look as natural as they could be, you know.
I mean, it's also because he's a real fighter, and so is Donnie.
Yeah.
Like I think Jet Li and Jackie Chan were talking about, out of all the martial artists in the Hong Kong pantheon, the best actual real life fighter is Donnie Yen. Because he's the only one who is like a trained street fighter in addition to everything he studies, practical application 100%. Like his family moved him out of Boston and sent him over to China because he was in underground fighting rings at like 13, 14. And he had joined a local triad too. Like,
I know that out here wilding.
Yeah, he also had joined a triad because he wanted like to test out his martial arts skills. His mom is like a internal martial arts grandmaster. And he was taking Taekwondo, and he was out in the streets fucking people up.
Not here, movie star, fucking people up.
Damn, son.
I mean, it was similar with Bruce Lee ended up coming to America because there was a hit on him for offending the son of a triad. He beat up the son of a triad boss. Oh, he had to go.
He would have caught the bullet.
Yeah, that's what they put him on a boat.
He would have caught it.
Like with his teeth, like Ace Ventura.
Wow. Nah. No, he would have caught the bullet for real, and he would tell us like,
They
we
still,
have all the moves, but
they still hit him technically, and the movie gun or whatever.
yeah, and it's not like Bruce Leroy catching bullets with your teeth.
Right. And then
Mhm.
Jackie Chan.
Yeah. But
Jackie
good building
Chan.
with though.
Oh yeah, my bad. No worries. What are you saying? I was about to express my love of Jackie Chan. My bad.
Oh no, Jackie Chan is amazing.
He is the most entertaining, martial arts actor in my opinion, because he's the only one that really he does all of his stunts, and B, he uses the environment. It's like campy. It's funny. It's hilarious, but it's also really creative. I love his style.
Yeah. I mean, Donnie also does his own stunts, which is also wild too. It's just Jackie has been doing crazy ass stunts since forever.
Yeah,
because he was a stuntman first.
Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah. But there are a few. I rocks with Iko Uwai, who does see a lot.
What was that? What movie was he in?
The Raid, and The Raid 2.
Okay.
The Raid was fucking dope.
The Raid was fire.
Yeah.
Holy
and there's
shit.
a movie with him and Tony Jaa. I can't remember the name of it, but that movie is amazing. Y'all need to go see that, like ASAP. Because if you like fighting and all kinds of, listen, we're gonna be in this sheltered in thing in New York for a minute. I don't care if they're opening the city on June 8th or whatever they say is gonna happen.
Or is it June 8th?
Yeah, they said
That's
June
what
8th.
Cuomo says.
Phase
We'll
one.
see what happens.
Well, isn't June 8th just one phase, and I don't think it's going to affect most of us.
I mean, the barber shops will be open, so y'all might be struggling a bit.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is just I feel like because there's specific rules that we're going by in order to be we're in phase one or going to phase two, but it's just considering Memorial Day weekend and just the protest that's going on. It's just I think we're gonna have a crazy spike, and then it's just gonna reset.
We might. We'll see what happens. I mean, that was another thing that was on the movement for Black Lives Call. Was they're going to be releasing some information for people who are protesting and the organizers of these protests to be able to still retain safety, because there's some real concerns nationally around COVID for people who want to go out in the streets and be politically active and express their discontent. But yeah.